5:05. I'm going to call to order this Newmarket School Board. Tonight is a budget workshop. We'll begin this meeting as we do all others with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will open briefly for public comment. As we have all district employees here, I doubt anyone's going to make any comment. So we will move to discussion. And Susan, if you'd like to proceed with the fiscal year 23 budget proposal presentation, we are ready.
Okay, sounds good. So, first of all, we have the final version here before you, and Jason will get this up on our website next Friday, and then we'll distribute it to others out. The viewing audience know that they'll be able to see our educational plan and the costs associated with that up on our website on Friday. Also, thank you very much for sending in your questions and things that you would like more information about. Very helpful. We don't want to waste people's time by talking about things that are not of interest or that are self-explanatory. And so we hope that tonight will be informative and help you to start to digest and process this at the next level. There are some things that we're not going to be able to do tonight. One, Assistant Superintendent Black is not in today, and so she will be with us next week and review that section of the budget and answer any questions submitted around her area. So I just wanted to mention that. And then there's also some other things that we won't have tonight, given that we just got the questions, we're just processing it. So any documents. So and we have every intention, we're talking tonight, to be helpful for all of us. We have a little chart for what the Buildings and Grounds Department under this model looks like, what food service looks like, and also around the guidance and counseling services. So we'll have that to you next week. We'll talk about it tonight, but sometimes having a visual like that also helps us to better understand it. So we'll prepare that for next week. Also tonight, we will not be providing any information on tax rates. Tax rates have not been set, and so we can't really answer those questions. So that information will be available in December, and we'll provide you with answers to that. So I'm just going to keep a list of things, and as meetings come and we have the information accessible to us, we'll provide you with the answers to your questions. So we're not going to be talking tonight about tax rates and the impact of the proposal. Of course, the tax rate hasn't been set, so we can't tell you what that might be. Also, we won't have any information about the impact of state legislation that changed on state property tax revenue. We won't have that information tonight either. So again, I have that on our list of things to get back to you on once that information becomes available. And then tonight also, we can talk a little bit about the format of the budget. Is this format working for you? Previously, it had been by function code, which people didn't really understand, and so we tried to transition to this new format. But we want to take a pause, see if that works. If people feel this is that more understandable to them, or if not, we can go back. We did last year and the year before, as we've been transitioning, doing both, so that we can build a relationship between the two. Our desire is to one format, and they're basically done on Excel spreadsheets and things like that. Then you're updating this, and then if you miss it over there and having cross-check, it's a lot of work to present it in multiple formats. So, and it's fine. We just want to know and providing you with whatever information you feel is helpful to your understanding of our plan and the process associated with that. So that's all of my introductory comments. Before we begin, I first want to say to my administrative team, thank you so very much for all that you do and have done for our kids, not only now and today, but throughout the pandemic. We have an outstanding team here with us tonight, and I just do want to offer publicly my gratitude for all that they do to support not only students but staff and families. Thank you so very much.
We agree.
So first up, the
The overview was last week, so we went through kind of those highlighted sections. So we're going to start with the elementary school. So I'm going to have Sean come up. He's going to make a few kind of framing comments about his proposal, and then I'm going to ask the questions that were submitted in relation to his, and then he's going to answer them for you. Then we'll have Dave come up. After Dave will be Erica. We'll go in the order the budget appears here to make it easier for you to follow along if you're looking at a certain section. So right now we're on page 9, and so I'm going to turn the mic over to Sean.
Thank you. On the hot seat here. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about the elementary school budget. I know you have probably read my overview. Just kind of give you kind of a quick rundown for the public that may be listening in as well. This budget was developed with the idea that we are now moving into a post-pandemic, or we're making that way into a post-pandemic kind of schooling. This year, I do have to admit, I was surprised by the number of students that are having some issues with social, emotional, and mental well-being. I thought since we were in 4 days a week, we wouldn't see such an uptick, but we have seen that uptick. So when I was developing the budget, we were looking at ways in which we can address those needs for our kids, not only this year, but in the years coming, because we know that it's going to be something that we are going to be struggling with for a number of years out. So one of the things that you will see that I asked for is, or requesting, is taking a look at getting a school counseling director. And that director would be someone that works district-wide. The idea is that this person would help coordinate all our kind of counseling services, working with the school social worker, the school psychologist, and our counselor in the building as well. We have a number of programs that we're trying to implement to help secure kids in terms of feeling safe at school, feeling assured with themselves, bring their anxiety levels down. But we need to have someone that can kind of put that all in an umbrella, so we make sure as we're progressing up from grade to grade that they're building upon each other, that we're not repeating sort of thing. So that was a request that you would see there. The other thing that we are seeing too is the number of referrals that we're getting for special education services in terms of testing and in terms of IEPs have gone up dramatically as well. Currently, Ms. Cochran, my assistant for special education services or student services, she is shouldering a lot of the clerical work that goes with this, such as setting up meetings, getting IEPs into systems and that sort of thing. It's not effective use of her time. So you would see that I have also requested that in our building that we have a person come in and do that sort of work for this department 16 hours a week. And that person would be, again, there's a program called Easy IP. They'd be doing the state paperwork, that sort of thing, that's really more clerical. This will free up Christina so she can actually be working more closely with the case managers, seeing what's going on in the classroom, seeing how the kids are interacting, and being able to monitor more closely the success of the students as they move on. The other thing that you'll notice is that we're looking to get someone to be an after-school activities coordinator. It's a huge, we all know the benefits of after-school clubs and activities for children. I have highly dedicated staff that, Jump Rope Club always runs, and we have an art club, and we have drama, and we have a garden club, but we want to expand these opportunities as well. And I think the idea is that we can get someone to kind of oversee what we have, and then kind of get out and put out surveys. What are other things that we can be offering to our students after school? Those activities, the more kids we can get involved, I think, again, that's going to address their social, emotional well-being, make them feel more comfortable. It's a great opportunity for staff to be able to see kids outside of this, outside of their classroom setting. So, that is something that we would really like to grow. We'd like a more robust program for the years to come in terms of that. And also, one of the things that you will notice is that we are not experiencing a huge uptick in student enrollment. I think we're projecting maybe an additional 14 students next year. So we are not looking to add any classroom positions. We'll stay where we're at currently. And with the numbers that we have and just that projected small increase, we're still have our nice low numbers that we currently have for that we're working with this year as well. And I did also mention in there is that I'm looking to tile 5 more classrooms. I have 8 that still have carpet. I'm looking to do 5 next year. That's something that we started this past summer. We did 6 rooms, do another 5, and do the last 3 in the following year. So the 5 that I'm looking for is to tear out the carpet in some of the classrooms. It's older than some of us here, and place it in tile. Those rooms that have been done, when you have an opportunity, I'd love to show you. I don't have a before and after photo, but it's just lighter feel. Teachers really like it. You know, we get a little area rug for them to do their class meetings and that sort of thing on, but it just makes for a much more positive environment, and it's much better for breathing as well. So that's kind of my big overview, kind of general overview for the elementary school. I know you had some particular questions, and if you have ones in addition to those, feel free to ask as well.
Okay, thank you, Sean.
Yep.
Okay, the first question, how will the .4 school counseling director, which is again K through 12, affect our ability to provide good services for our students?
Yeah, like I mentioned in my overview, we're dealing with a lot of kids that are having issues, like coming in from the COVID, really strict. We're lightening up. We're having a lot of kids that are having issues, social, emotional, mental well-being. And so we have programs like Choose Love. We have the LEAD program. We have other programs that our school psychologist, social worker are implementing. Again, what I would envision for this person is that they would be able to kind of oversee all these services, not only in my school, but as part of the district in total, to make sure those programs are in sync and that they work well with each other. So we're, you know, as the child progresses from kindergarten, a kindergartner's needs are vastly different than a 3rd grader, which is vastly different than an 8th grader. So we want to make sure that we're getting programs in place that are going to address those needs as children mature.
I would also add that the guidance counselor will also oversee the addition of a social worker. So we'll be adding through ESSER funds an additional social worker and some family support. So this person in this position would oversee that as well, so that we have, you know, more coordination of services for families, students, and staff.
The thing that I liked about it, we're talking about curriculum, talk about vertical alignment going up, and this just takes, you know, with the focus being SEL so much in this budget proposal for obvious reasons, it's good to see that happening in concert with that.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Can you expand on what the professional services are in your school budget?
Yeah, I can tell you right now that the professional services, we have expanded how that has been implemented in the school. That's pretty much because there's such a labor shortage out there. The idea of trying to find additional custodians, additional food service or transportation has been a great challenge. So we do have done some outsourcing, but I think that I will defer to Jana Mellon when she speaks about that. She has a little more detail in terms of numbers and how that's all been working for us so far. But from my view right now, the services seems to be really starting to click now, so I'm pretty happy with it.
Thank you. You are requesting a projector, laser projector, and audio equipment. How can you guarantee that it will be used?
Yep. So yes, I did reach out to. It's funny how this kind of came about. It was kind of an aha moment when I was doing my budget. I know that both the junior senior high school has a presentation system. I reached out to Jason about getting a similar system for us. The aha moment came into that I have a number of grades right now are doing virtual field trips. And so for instance, my 3rd grade is going to the Lowell Mills, but they're not leaving the confines of the building. So what we're looking is one aspect of this is that there's a plethora of things out there where children can travel all over the world virtually and speak to someone in Australia. So that's one idea, is that, okay, let's open up this opportunity for us to pull in more things and still keep our kids in place, particularly we don't know what COVID's gonna look like next year. But it's also because if we want a guest speaker, not only for the students, but guest speakers for the staff, We have no place where we can put a whole grade level or all the staff in one place. I literally have to go out and get a cart, run my computer into it, and find a place to do it. The other nice thing about this system, if we can get it, is that if the students are doing presentations to parents, it will be something that they can use to show what the audience what they're doing, PowerPoint things or things on that lines, videos and that sort of thing. So it's a tool that I would love to have, because I do think it offers a lot of opportunities for us, even in terms of professional development for teachers. If we can have a nice place, we're looking at what used to be the old gym part of our old gym, which is part of the cafeteria. We're looking at locating it there. So we have professional development. I can have staff in a comfortable area, a little more room to spread out, and they can work with educators from across the country or across the world as well.
Also, who's requesting projectors in your school?
That's part of the projectors, and the
Okay.
laser projector system is I requested for
Okay,
for
so the
Jason to do that.
projector, the laser projector and the audio system
Yep.
are a presentation
Yeah,
package.
the whole presentation
Okay.
package. And Jason can probably give you the nitty-gritty details of the technology piece to it. But it's similar to the system that they have up at the junior, senior high school. And I think it would be wonderful if we could have that opportunity here at the elementary school as well.
Okay.
Any
So
other?
we'll pause. Those were the questions that were submitted. Does anybody have any other questions for Principal Pine?
Last year, some of your staff went to Strawberry Bank, and they did a virtual tour of Strawberry Bank.
Yes, they actually did I had some teachers, fourth grade teachers. I actually had an acting program there. It was my Oscar award performance. I was a merchant. Had to stop looking at the camera. But yes, so I did have teachers that actually go, and they filmed. They got myself and other teachers to take parts, and they did a whole production. Miss Rodier had her son, Julian, who was a student of Exeter. He came and shot all the video. And again, once you have a video like that, instead of one class, you can sit down in the fourth grade, have a whole presentation for that. So it was fun. It was a great idea.
And that would have been, if you'd had that presentation package, it
Right.
would have worked out better.
Yep.
And I think also if we go back to one of the plans that we had for the schools before we redid them was for community activities. And
Right.
if you have these resources in both of the schools, they can be
Right,
utilized.
exactly. Like the PTA loves to do movie nights.
Exactly.
So here we go. Now instead of the PTA having to get this blow-up screen, where we're pulling up, putting up the old tripod screen and trying to stick the ruler in so it doesn't roll and that sort of thing, we can have a nice screen. They can have great sound quality, a nice projection, and it's it's a resource, again, after school for our families that they can come in and enjoy a PTA activity.
Did have one question.
Sure.
I mean, I'm shocked how minimal the increase is, to be quite honest. It's obviously a very well thought out budget, but I feel like I'm obligated to ask.
Sure.
Is there anywhere that you feel you can trim without adversely affecting the school or the students?
You know what, I'd really have to take a look off, I wouldn't want to comment on that now, but I will, when we come back next week, I would be more prepared to answer that for you, Gary. Right now, I think we're running a pretty thin, lean budget as is, but again, a second glance around, maybe there are areas that we could do that.
Yeah, it
Yep.
is very lean, so.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
thank you,
Yep.
appreciate that.
No problem.
And I do want to mention again that one of the things that we spent quite some time doing this year was starting to really weed the garden. So we did have those conversations about where are we not spending money that we've been requesting money, in what areas, and that's why you see in some of these areas decreases already. So we have begun to do that. Because for every dollar that we ask for that we're not going to spend means there's something that we needed and wanted that we decided not to move forward. So we have made 2 passes through our documents and asked ourselves those kinds of questions. So, but we can certainly make another pass and see if there was anything else. But we did spend quite some time.
I wouldn't want to burden you by spending a lot of time, but
Yeah, I'll take a glance on Friday.
Thank you very
I'll be
much.
more than happy to.
Susan, to that point, the one thing that I made a note on page 2 is that it says student needs drive educational programming and educational programming drives costs.
Right.
So the lens that I'm looking at this budget takes into account the fact that the educational experts that we work with, who know far more than I'm ever gonna know, have provided us with something that makes sense. That's just my thought.
Yeah, and it's such a tough position because we have to look at that lens. We also have to look at the community lens. We find out that inflation in the last 6 or 12 months is 6%. So, yeah, it's just.
It's tough because, yes, we have to do that. We also know that we have children that have serious socio SEL needs that
Absolutely.
we have to address.
Yep,
Because
absolutely.
that benefits the community overall in the end.
No, absolutely.
I don't know it's not okay to say that, we don't know. The current first grade class, the second grade next year, is quite a bit smaller than third grades. I know that that's the grade that my daughter is currently in. We always made the assumption that people just chose to keep their children home during the pandemic, and then when they could return to normal, that those students are going to be going back into the class. Is that just a small year, or?
To be honest, that kind of struck me because I anticipated that number to go up this summer, but it held steady. It just seems that every year, some years we have these bubble classes. Walk through, we got 105 kids. For some reason why, I don't know what was going on when those kids were. Yeah, sorry. No, let me rephrase that.
A long winter.
I don't know.
6 years ago, is that what we're talking about?
I used to be a science teacher. Yeah, I don't know why that number, it dipped like that. It's because the following, the kindergarten class this year, we're looking at, we're in the high 80s. So I don't know, some of the parents, I don't have a really good answer for you on that, and why that number dipped so dramatically, but it's pretty amazing. I mean, it's 20 less than the current kindergarten class.
Are there a lot of homeschool?
We have a few homeschool, but not enough in that particular grade to, maybe 2 or 3. So it's not enough to really make a significant difference. Yep. Next time I'll get my foot out of the mouth too. Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you,
All right.
Sean.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll have Mr. Dalton.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I think the themes at all the levels are really, I appreciate your comments about that, are really go right through the budget, and a lot of the comments would be very similar, just leveled differently. What I'd like to do is just sort of summarize the senior high school together, and then I'll answer whatever questions that you have. Certainly there's some really great things going on junior high this year. We have all our programming back. We have kids in language classes. We have computer science going on. At the middle school, we've really, expanded those UA and those exploration areas really, I think, really strongly this year. And I don't have anything to compare it to other than we were bare bones last year just trying to get through the year. But kids are really excited. They love going to these classes. It's great to see kids changing from classroom to classroom. They're moving. I mean, it's wonderful. Likewise, at the high school, kids are enjoying lots of additional electives this year. We've added courses in AP Environmental Science, which I learned they call that APES, if you haven't heard that yet, but they're APES about apes. And we have students who are in AP Stats, and we have people taking astronomy, and it's been really excited to be able to offer kids courses that they've been really yearning for and that they're taking. So all of that is going on, and of course, congratulations to our girls state championship soccer team on their great win, undefeated season, first state championship, I understand, in school history for girls soccer. So lots of excitement, and of course all the other teams, even though they didn't win their championships, had great seasons as well. So it's just a lot of good energy. And we've got junior high kids out playing sports and running track. It's what school's supposed to be. So that's all the good stuff, right? But here we are, we're in the middle of this pandemic, and we talk about the post-pandemic child. We're still in it. And, I like to think about this as, we've had a growing problem anyways when we talk about students, when we talk about the stressors, anxiety. There's been lots of data prior to the pandemic about rising anxiety and stress among adolescents. And I think what happens with anything is that when you already have sort of a weakness and a crack, you put a big stress on it, and you really start to see it break. And I think that's what's happened. I'm hearing it from my colleagues. I'm hearing it from my colleagues, my prior colleagues from Massachusetts. I see it in the principals group in New Hampshire, and we're all talking about the same thing, that kids and their families and our staff are really struggling to recover and cope. And so it goes without saying that we really need to think about that. We can't just assume it's going to go away. We have to build structures, and we have to think about the way we do business in a way that addresses that. So I think that's what you hear through the budget. You know, you see there's going to be pieces in here. It's really not about stuff, although there's some that help. There's some tools in here that will help us to address learning loss pieces and things like that. But it's really about thinking about how we do business, thinking and looking for opportunities to restructure, and to try to do so in a way that builds our capacity to meet student need, but at the same time is done in a way that takes into account being a sustainable program, a sustainable process, an institutional infrastructure, if you will, that's supported and sustainable. And that includes staff, because people are getting burned out. So we need to think about that as well. So that's what this budget will do. I think just in terms of the big picture, you know, our enrollment at the junior high is down, I think it was 17 students. Class sizes, as far as the middle school model goes, are still reasonable. The smallest class size drops to 15 in the 6th grade. 7th and 8th grade are still 19, 20. So again, you know, sometimes when I look at the enrollments here, they go up and down, and this time we're going down. And but you know, we're still supporting those students. I wouldn't go to a 3-teacher model for 6th grade because we're there for 1 year. I think it's financially reasonable, fiscally sound for middle school programming. So I think that's fine. Our high school decreases a little bit. I think we're down 7 kids as well. You know, this affects class sizes. I think I talked to you guys last year about high school scheduling. You really don't know what's happening in the high school schedule till you get that first pass out for course signups, and that usually typically will happen. We'll start to build that process out in February. By March, we'll get those initial signups. We'll start to look at staffing, and then if there's any impacts for, you know, for staffing and things, we pretty much know at that time by March. So, and they can fluctuate. One of the things we didn't do this year, we were adding electives, and I think this might actually be one of the questions that came out. We were adding electives, and we weren't we kind of threw them all out there this year. And when you do that the first year, they spread out. So we ran small sections. What we will do going forward is we will consolidate those, and we will go on to a sort of a menu year. Like we'll have year 1 offerings, year 2 offerings, because what we want to do is be able to offer our students a wide variety of courses during their high school experience. But we don't have to do that every year. We can consolidate. We can offer fewer electives 1 year, change the menu for the 2nd year. They get a whole new slate of courses to take. That's the idea. You start alternating. Things with AP courses might alternate every other year, that kind of thing. So we're putting a plan together on that. Also, worthy to mention is thinking about the middle school and the needs of those students. And what we're learning with all of the crises that we see and the stress and anxiety that people are feeling, students are feeling, is that our model doesn't really meet their needs. So we really have to look at that carefully. And we're starting to talk about that now. I don't know what it means for when it will change, but we're at least starting that planning process and thinking thoughtfully about what that structure should be. So that's everything about what the schedule is, what their offerings are, how they move, what they take, how they're supported, all of that, everything has to be looked at. What supports in terms of counseling do they have? How can we support them? How can we support their families? How can we support their interests so that they feel like they're important and that they're their own group and they feel good about being at school every day and about being the people that they are? Because middle school is challenging enough on good times, and you have bad times, and it's really stressful. So you'll see that in the counseling plan. So we talked about the, as Sean said, the addition of a district-wide counseling director will allow us to be really coordinated and thoughtful about the services and the way that we're delivering services to students. It will also allow us to be thoughtful about the way we communicate the availability of those services outside of the school program to families. So as Dr. Given said, and as Sean was talking about, we also have we have ESSER funds. So we're going to be able to increase our capacity in that department. We have a Tier 2 interventionist who's currently working with us who will be in the ESSER fund side of things. So we'll be able to keep another position in the department in the regular budget with her moving out into the ESSER funds. We're also going to be able to bring in a social worker, an additional social worker full-time, and we'll be able to offer family support in programming through that grant as well, which is huge. So we talk about all the time trying to get information out to parents, and we really need to have some coordinated programming throughout a year that's really focused and coordinated so that the message that comes out of that is clear to parents and is helpful and responsive to parent needs as well as student needs. So I think I covered most of that as far as the intro goes, so happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Let's start off with the math teachers. So what specific math teachers are eliminated, and how will this affect our math program going forward?
We are not eliminating any math teachers at the high school. We had a 0.5 FTE in the budget for this year for a math coach, which we did not fill. We were able to meet the needs of the math coaching through the program adoption, through virtual coaching. So we were using online resources, and our math teachers have been getting training at the beginning of each unit this year. So that's basically, that's an unfilled position that we're not putting back in the budget for next year.
Okay. The next part of that question is, would it be beneficial to only cut it by 0.3? And again, we're not cutting, we just aren't filling a position. We've met the need by outsourcing coaching through the adoption of our math program. Last year, of course, when we adopt a budget at this time of year, a couple of minutes after we open the year, you know, lots of things can change by the time you get to the end of the year, and we didn't think that we would be able to queue up a core math program this time last year. So having been able to do that, it frees us up, and it's, again, another example of how we're kind of combing through what are our needs and how do our resources align with that. We don't need this. We're filling that need elsewhere, so we're cutting back in that area.
And I think somebody had seen that we do have a math teacher that's in there at 0.8 in the department, and the 0.8 math teacher is actually 0.8 math, 0.2 science with teaching physics. So it's not like we have a partial teacher there or something. Yeah. Thanks for that.
Okay. Okay, so you've talked quite a bit about the 0.4 counseling director. I think we've kind of covered that, but if we haven't answered the question, we can loop back to that. But I think both you and your opening comments and Principal Pine answered that one about the value of the 0.4 school counseling director. One other comment I will make about that, it's a zero-sum game. It's not that we're actually adding an FTE. We're realigning FTE that we already have. Okay? So I just want to make that clear. That's why you might see it appear as under the administrative line, but you'll see it less FTE
Less
on the
than the total,
counseling line.
right.
So the FTE remains the same. It's how are we using that FTE. So I just want to make sure that people understand that.
I think too, I just want to, because you said that way, it just triggered this thought, and I just want to say it because we don't get a public voice often, but the staff has done an incredible job filling we are short-staffed. We've been short-staffed all year in multiple areas. Like, we're not just talking about support staff, and in a crisis, in what I would call a crisis. And our staff has just been unbelievable in terms of picking things up. It's not about, not my job, you need to find somebody. Everybody, the team has just pulled together. They work incredibly hard. Jody Callanan's been awesome. She's covered multiple areas, and she does it with grace and great confidence, and she's doing an unbelievable job. But so are the other folks around her, and the other people who've jumped in to help us out with whether it's athletics or in the counseling department itself, or covering lunches. I mean, they've been unbelievable. They continue to do everything they can. But it feels like, if I could say to you, it feels like it's March now. That's what it feels like. That's the impact of it. So, so this plan will help us get things in line.
Thank you for saying that, Dave.
Yep.
Okay, again, the comment around professional services would be the same. We're going to have Jana and David Riley, who are, that's their kind of wheelhouse, address the professional services. So those are going up because we're outsourcing. So when you outsource, the staffing is decreasing by 8.7 overall, and professional services increasing. So they kind of offset, and that's really the reason why. But she and Dave will get into that shortly. So the next question, does the budget retain the assistant to the principal position created this year?
No, that position's not in the budget. It's out for next year.
Okay. Why is there a need to increase the number of monitor positions at the junior high school and high school?
So again, we've been short-staffed all year. We need those monitors during lunch because we're using multiple locations to cover lunch. And what's happened is, just because of the fact that we're short-staffed, is it ends up being an administrator or administrators covering lunch duty for, what amounts to, about almost 2 hours of the day. So we're just hoping to get an additional monitor, and hopefully we'll find somebody that wants the job and we can fill it, and we can put 2 in where the most kids are. We'll put 2 people, and then the other one will cover the library or whatever it is that we decide we're using for a lunch location. Right now it's the media center.
Again, that has to do with behaviors. Like, we're trying to give teachers, admin, chance to do their jobs, but we're still dealing with behaviors with kids. And lunchtime's a great time for it to come out.
Sure is.
Yes.
Spoken with experience.
Just about 3 hours ago.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Has the adding of additional electives, you already addressed this question, so I'm going to move on.
You did a great job answering that. My concern, the electives is awesome. But my experience, I've seen that electives live and then die, and then all those books and all those resources are just stuck in the closet and forgot about it. I just want to make sure that as a district planning that we're not done. So it sounds like ultimately years would do that, but I just want to be aware that my experience, I've seen that as an issue, and I don't know all the resources are waste.
That's fair. I've seen it in the past too. I've seen that happen in places, but I think one of the big things that's changed is there's less textbook purchasing in general anyway, so we're not doing those big investments of textbooks that end up sitting on a shelf. Don't say that too fast. Sitting on a shelf. So we get into these, a lot of times we're using software or subscription-based resources which can expire, so that you're not stuck with them year after year, or that loss. You can always come back to them later. But those are good points. I mean, I think that really depends on why and why you're adopting an elective in the first place. It needs to have some staying power, right? Some programming, you get kids who have a fleeting interest in an area, and then that group takes it, and then it happened in my old school. We offered botany. We had a group of kids wanted to be botanists. Can't imagine why. And after that group went through, nobody wanted to take botany. The course died. It's exactly what you're talking about. So it wasn't because something else pushed it out. It was because there was no interest. So.
And the UBD, the curriculum, the goal out of that is it can be passed from one teacher to another. Right?
That's
Yes,
correct.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing too in high schools, best practice is that you rotate your offerings, and you do that because it actually engenders more interest among students because they know that they can't take it now, and especially in a small high school, even a large high school that I came from, students will look forward to something, and you'll have more mass going after certain electives. So the rotating of course offerings has many valuable, reasons to implement. So.
And as kids know that that's happening, and as we are able to communicate that through the course selection process and through information sessions with kids and their parents, it also leads to kids knowing that they have to plan ahead. So it sort of supports that whole idea of coming to high school and plan high school. Don't just fall through it, right? Plan it. Be really deliberate about what your plans are to the extent you can and and support it accordingly. So if you look at your 4-year thing and you know that APX is only going to be offered during your junior year and you really want that course, well then you got to back up and say, how am I going to get there? I'm going to make sure that I've got the right prereqs or whatever it is, and that's new thinking for them, right, at this age. So that's just another thing to help encourage and support that thinking and planning. Yep.
Okay, next question. Were the standing desks in the high school budget requested by teachers, and what is the purpose of them?
Yes, they're requested by teachers. I don't think any administrators did, so I think that was pretty much it. It's a couple reasons. So we have two real uses to that. One is that for the adults, a lot of people, they're ergonomically better for them physically, and a lot of our teachers, I've seen some of the, when we came in, I saw more than I did in my old district. People already had them. So there's a lot of teachers who are using standing desks. There are counselors that are using standing desks, and they just don't sit all day. They stand instead, and they have little high stools that they lean against instead of a desk where they're low. So we're seeing more of that going on. But separate from that, we're also seeing an increased use and sort of hybrid design in classrooms where we have standing desk stations, if you will, so that students, particularly those students who maybe are, exhibit some ADHD, ADD, and maybe are asked to, we're asked to provide them with movement breaks to keep them focused. Well, now instead of leaving the room to go for a walk, they can walk to the side of the room and they can be moving their legs back and forth while they're still receiving instruction in the classroom. So some of these are just best practices, new sort of room design features that research is showing helps kids engage in learning. So it's for both the adults and the kids.
Thanks for telling us that, Dave, because I did not know that was even going on in that way, and I was wondering about the standing desk, but thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Happy to.
Okay, so those are the questions that were sent in. Does anybody have any additional questions that have?
One question I sent in, and I don't think I heard you good, very well. I understand we're doing social worker funding through master grants, which is fantastic. And I guess what I'm curious about is this, do we think this is a long-term position that we're going to fund in the future, or is this strictly kind of help us get through this transitional period when kids are needing the additional resources to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a great question to know what the need's going to look like, a few years out. But I think we're responding to a need now. What opportunities going forward that might exist to sort of reshape what that needs to be and how that delivery takes place. Your guess is as good as mine, and right now on that. But I would say I can't imagine the need's going to go away right now. As I said, I think even before the pandemic, we already saw the increasing needs. So, what is a right size department to meet the needs? I think right now it's high. I don't know what that's going to look like, in a year or two or three or more. I'm not sure we can even guess.
Actually, I was going to answer that question later on, but so the question.
How'd I do then? How'd I do? Did I get it right, Dr. Givens?
Good answer, but I'll just elaborate a little bit on that. So we have a number of positions we've talked about that we're targeting ESSER grant money for. A lot of it has to do with the social, emotional, mental health and well-being of staff, students, and families. Also, learning loss is another big piece of that. And so any way that we can take advantage of the ESSER grants in order to support us during this time, we are. The ESSER grants are available to us until 2024. So some of this, including the social worker, we will be adding now. So we will have that position, these additional positions in place for 2.5 years. So yes, it will be this year, next year, and the year after that. And, you know, 3 years, we'll have a better sense of what we
Right.
need. And then if we find that there is an ongoing need in some area, then we would. But when we're hiring right now, we're looking at those positions from now until 2024 with a reassessment to be done annually based on what we see. But they're not intended at this particular point to be permanent positions. The ESSER grant positions are anticipated to be that. The restructuring that we're doing around the counseling and adding of some of these co-curricular components, which also will enrich and help with mental health and well-being, will be permanent. So anything that we think is permanent is in the taxpayer, bucket, and anything that is supports that we think that we're going to need in order to be able to address pre-COVID and current COVID conditions is in the ESSER grant. So that's how we divided the funding for the plan that we have.
I have one more question outside of
Sure.
those items, and then
Yeah.
you'll allow me to do a little ad hoc questioning. What's the one thing, just say so,
I wish we could have had this in this budget, because if we did, it's gonna make a huge difference. That is not in the budget.
That's not in the budget? Whew, I don't know, I haven't given that thought. I'm sure there's probably 12 creative things. You know what a passion, and an educational passion, and one that, we're just starting to see now at the middle school is around STEAM. And it's around design thinking. And when people understand what design thinking is, which is sort of the way engineers work, right? It's around problem solving, prototyping, pitching, understanding, solving problems from the user end, the person who's going to benefit from the solution. You get kids engaged in that work, and it cuts across all domains, and they engage in that kind of project work and thinking, starting at the youngest age all the way up. They do amazing things, and they really learn how to think critically, and they learn how to work together in teams. And this would be crazy since you asked the question that open-ended.
Why not?
I would
Put it out to the
love
universe.
a STEAM workshop. In the biggest sense, a STEAM workshop where kids have tools, stations to work, access to resources, ways to communicate with people that they need to ask questions of on the outside. It would be that STEAM lab. And that's a big ask, but that's what I would see. That would change things over time, because that opportunity, when you have a space like that to work, and you have a rich, fertile environment where teachers can work together to plan the activities that kids are going to engage in, that's powerful stuff. That'd be
Just
my
trying to think
ask.
where we can put it.
Yeah, that'd be my ask.
Where would you say, where we put it?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking too. I'm like, what room?
I
There's
have
a lot
an
of,
idea.
there's a lot of room over behind the parking lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of room over there.
I have ideas. Dave and I have been talking.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Dave, thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Dave.
Susan, I wonder if maybe before or after budget, if we could actually talk, when people think of social worker, I don't think everybody understands what a social worker role is. There's so many different things that person will do, and by adding that person, we're meeting the needs of our community, families, students, teachers. And I really love to maybe explain it more.
I think when so this week we'll work on, kind of sort of a quasi, what does the model look like with the various kinds of positions, and we'll try to highlight, the various components of who's doing what, so that maybe people will have a better understanding, and, we can at least put together some high-level job descriptions, so that might also help people understand the value that will
Just with the
have.
cost of living going up, we're going to see a need.
Oil prices going up, we talked about
We're
that
gonna
other
see a need,
times.
and I just want people to understand what that social worker is.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
everyone.
Before you guys leave, I just wanted to sort of reiterate what Susan said from the beginning. I'm just speaking for the board and off the cuff. All you on the room, the administrative team, the staff, faculty, everyone at the schools have made us through these past 2 years and have allowed us to do things that I didn't think were possible. So thank you for every hour that you spent. We appreciate it greatly.
It's so much we can never repay it.
Drive safely. Run, Forrest, run, all of you who have completed. Get some rest. Drive safe. Okay, so next we have Erica McNeil, our Student Services Director. And her section of the budget starts on page 22, I believe. Yes, 22.
So in general, you will see that our numbers of students with disabilities has basically remained consistent. We had a little bit of a blip year, but we're kind of back and moving up. Our percentage has increased, and that's because the general population has decreased while our numbers have remained just about the same, which means our percentage looks higher. In the past, we've always been below 15%, and now we're over 17%. Our out-of-district placements, those are the students who are not being served within our buildings. Those are students that I case manage who are in schools that are sometimes not in the state, could be in Massachusetts or other places. And we have another 6 students who are there. We also have approximately 6 students in charter schools. So parents, if they are not going to our schools, they can choose to attend a public chartered school. But we, as Newmarket, we're still responsible for the services for any student who resides in Newmarket. So we still provide those, and our building assistant principals help to case manage those students. Our numbers of students who are out of district has been relatively consistent over the years. You know, we've kind of gone down slightly over the past 5-6 years, but we are relatively consistent there. We are also looking to keep our staffing numbers consistent. We have 17 special educators across the district, 3 of which are grant funded. That's the same we have currently, so we're not looking to make any increases there. We're also looking to keep all of our related service providers the same. Those are our OT and speech pathologists, school psychologists. We're keeping all of those equal as well as our paraprofessional numbers. We're keeping those consistent as well. We have been doing some interesting outsourcing with paraprofessional support as there's been workforce issues in other areas. We have workforce issues as well on the educational side. Currently I have 3 outsourced paraprofessionals at the elementary school to help with the student need. So we are still coming up with interesting and creative solutions to meet our student needs in the buildings. Our average caseloads, you can see they're kind of just by grade levels. We're kind of right in the middle of the Seacoast region. We like to stay in the middle of the Seacoast region because, one, it means we can meet the varying needs of our students, but it also means that from a workforce position, you know, to be the highest caseload area is not always the best, right? People then leave the districts who have the, you know, caseloads of 20 students to come to a district where you have a more manageable caseload. Our averages can also be swayed as we have high need students. The number of students that teacher is serving is lower. So you may have 4 or 5 high autistic need kiddos with one case manager where you might have 15 with another case manager. So you've got to remember the averages can be swayed by those highs and lows. As Mr. Pine had alluded to earlier, we are looking to add some administrative support at the elementary level. There is a lot of paperwork in our field. Anybody who's been to an IEP meeting might know that there's a lot of paperwork that is shuffled in our world. And some of that could be done by somebody who's trained to track and monitor the paperwork, set up meetings, and we could take that load off of our assistant principal. So we are looking for that slight increase there in administrative support.
Paperwork with deadlines.
Paperwork with deadlines, yes. We spend a lot of time with timelines and paperwork. That's a big part of what we are doing. Not what we like to spend our time doing, but what we end up doing. The big drivers in the student services section, contracted services are up pretty substantially. I think everyone here has noticed, you know, oil prices going up. The overhead for contracted services also goes up. We did have a dip in the prior year of like 57,000, so now we're up by 114, so we'll have that one year where we dipped low, but now we are going up in our contracted service area. We are also seeing the same with transportation, again, another area where there's critical shortage in the nation with bus drivers. There's also, when, say we have 2 students going to an out-of-district school, and say Newmarket and Exeter could share the cost of that bus. Well, if that Exeter student is no longer going to that school, now we're footing the whole bill for that, and we're experiencing that as well. Some of that due to COVID. There's been some changes in other districts around students' placements, which means now I can't share a bus with another district, which just is increased cost to us. We also see that the charter school services are up just a little under $12,000. I know the one question for me was around that. We are serving one more student. I will say it's not just that one student. We have shifts, so we might have had somebody graduate last year and we have 2 new students this year, but right now we're serving one more. What does happen when they're at charter schools, say there was a classroom paraprofessional that was supporting 3 students here, when that student goes and they have 5 hours of paraprofessional support, I now need to duplicate that in that other chartered school. So I have that here in my, say, 3rd grade classroom, where that one student could have been in with that staff member. Now I have to duplicate the service in another location. So that's where some of those costs go. No, not for special education students. So the charter schools are free to parents, and parents can choose those public schools. They are responsible for driving the students, but we are responsible for any IDEA services. So not only the services, but Ms. Cochran or Ms. Thorell are also then, visiting the charter schools, making sure services are happening, writing the IEPs. So we have to duplicate those services for those students.
Okay.
Other questions? I know I tend to talk quickly.
Can you speak a little bit to the needs you're seeing in students?
Yeah, I didn't go to ESOL, I'll get to that next. We, as everyone has said, the social emotional needs are definitely not, I think, what anyone expected coming into this year. Even things like, having 1st grade students coming into school for the first time because maybe they didn't come to kindergarten and they're still not toilet trained. So it's more than just, the social emotional needs, some of the aggressiveness, students who have, if you think about it, some students were home with their parents instead of going to a daycare center and may not have had the experiences walking into our elementary school that we would typically have seen students coming in with. So things like not knowing routines, not being able to walk in a line, and not being able to use a tablet when they want to use a tablet. So there's some real high behavioral needs, but also other things like the toilet training that you would expect a 1st grader to be toilet trained, and unless there's a severe disability that we're working with, but we're having students with higher needs that we just did not anticipate. So one of the questions was about the social worker, and the social worker, we kind of in our counseling world, we see the students who require the counseling. What we don't do is provide that social emotional learning throughout their day that's woven into every minute of their day. Sorry, I talked so much that now my throat's dry. So part of what the social worker would help with is infusing that into every moment of every day, right? It's not just going out for your 30 minutes of counseling. When the counselors have 30-minute sessions kind of lined up, it's how do we create the environment in every moment of every student's day so that they can be successful in the classroom. So part of it is working on that classroom portion of SEL that is throughout the day. And I forgot ESOL. Our ESOL numbers also have been really consistent over the years. It is interesting, you can have a family move in and the students may speak no English, and that's a heavy lift for our ESOL staff. But we've done an amazing job over the past 5 years since I've been here. We move students to what we call a monitor status, which means they're able to speak and listen and read and write in our language, and they need check-ins. They need us to continually test them to make sure that they're accessing the curriculum, but they don't need that direct support where they are walking in from a different country and coming into our classrooms not knowing English, really.
definitely eye-opening, when I read your report, that we have 20 students from 8 different home languages.
Yep.
For our community to know that, we're really a welcoming community, but you need some help.
Yeah, and a lot of times what we do end up finding is, due to our close proximity to UNH, we may get some people who come in for like a postdoctoral year or something like that from another country. They might be here for a few years, they require this support, but because we are so close to UNH, those people kind of cycle through. So it really has kept our numbers consistent over the years. So it's not just the people who have been living here for forever and a day, it's these families that are coming and accessing the university, and they bring their families with them.
Is our assessment services pretty much the same for other people in the state?
We're now a little higher. 15.16 is the average in the state, and we'd always been just below that percentage. This year we ticked up over 17%. Really, that is because our total number of students is down about 50 students, I believe, but our numbers have not. At the elementary level, Ms. Cochran can tell you, the amount of referrals we've gotten has probably at least doubled over between last year and this year. We're just seeing the results of, the learning loss, the social emotional needs. So we're slightly increasing right now, and I think that will probably stay true for at least a few years. Push those services. Hopefully the students who just needed that extra boost will get that boost and be able to be discharged. That's really our whole goal, is to provide those services early and put ourselves out of work.
So important, and I think, we always talk about academics, but really a huge part of early childhood education is socialization. You socialize into education, right? So, kids aren't just born and know how to work productively with other students. Concepts like sharing. You think about a child that comes from they're the single child in a family, what kinds of experiences do they have? And then you add COVID, where everybody was shut down. It's not that they didn't just come into school. Everybody was in their own house. And developmentally, for early childhood, there's a lot that takes place there, not just cognitively, but really developmentally along the social continuum. And so, really important that we provide, the lower class sizes help, so teachers can give a little bit more individualized attention, and then additional supports in these areas where we really wouldn't, in a more typical situation or context, be seeing kids with some of the needs that they have, So
Yeah, and you don't think about that, but people are now advocating for pre-K and kindergarten, and you're right, for 2 years they didn't attend a day school, they stayed at home. How did they learn to share blocks if they were only children?
Working parents.
And
They were
with
at
2
home
working
with
parents. And now that we're really focusing and advocating for this younger group of students is, just awesome. Because they need that extra help.
They do. And
You
how
don't
do you
think
use-
about that
Yep.
as we're parents of older kids, but where do they learn to share? And how do you come in and stand in line and go to your desk and put your coat away if you've never done it before?
Right.
I hadn't even considered the toileting piece.
That-
That blew me, I'm blown away. I did not think about that
Right.
piece of it, but it makes sense.
So it's
And
all
the
those
impact
pieces.
that has on our faculty and the need for additional services is
Absolutely.
very pronounced, and we're hearing it.
And that's why it's the range of challenges, but it's the variation as well, It's not like there's profiles. It's almost like kids have their own unique combination of needs right now that are not, there's not a pattern to it.
It's not a one-size-fits-all.
It really isn't.
And it's not the same that we're seeing all students come with. It really is varied.
So that makes, a lot more work. And it's not, I don't mean work in the sense that it's hard and we're laboring, but it's for us to understand the needs to be able to then develop the programming to meet those needs is adds an element to the exhaustion I think people feel right now in general. It's really hard work right now trying to meet the needs that we don't quite understand for an entire population of students that have experienced a trauma in a community and in a world that has all experienced a trauma, which impairs our ability to process and learn and communicate with one another. You know, when the communication skills, when the social skills aren't there, when kids can't use their words to express their needs in ways that you would normally be able to see them because they have gaps, is just making for a more challenging year than we ever anticipated we would be in. I think this year is much harder than last year for us. We really did think, because we were here 4 days a week and most people were not in school all year, that our kids would be in these routines, that we would not experience the same level of challenge as other people. And I will say this has probably been the hardest school opening I've ever had. And to Dave's point, I would agree. I think we all feel like it's about April right now in our in the way that we feel. So
Another thing that we're experiencing as well is there was the eviction moratorium, and we also have more families who are experiencing homelessness. And then we also have to transport those students so they can remain in our schools, and that's putting another burden on an already overburdened population of bus drivers. We don't have bus drivers, we don't have buses. And so now trying to figure out how also to meet those needs of students who are experiencing homelessness so they can remain in our schools has also been difficult this year. So.
You see people questioning empty buses. They don't realize we have buses going Hampton,
Yep.
Portsmouth, picking up children and bringing them back here.
Absolutely.
There could be one child
Yep.
in that bus for half an hour, 40 minutes.
We have kids who are on the bus for an hour, trying to get them to and from school, not just within our town, but if I'm taking a kiddo who might be homeless, they might be riding the bus with the kids here, and they just might be the last stop, and that last stop could be another 15 or 20 minutes away. So there's a lot of varying needs of kiddos, and we did definitely see that kind of uptick of students who are experiencing homelessness this year due to that change of the moratorium.
Erica, I always appreciate when you come and talk to us like this, because I think sometimes I'm singularly focused on what student services is, but it is so much more than I envision. Homelessness,
Yep.
Various things that we've talked about that impact the students.
Yep.
And ways that we have to support them. So thank you for educating me again.
And we protect those students so the people don't
we
know.
Right.
So there's just so much that goes into it, and I don't think we know enough of what a social worker does and what your department's doing.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
Erica.
very much. Okay, now we're going to shift gears to operations. You all are free to go home and get some rest. And so I'm going to call Jana up next. And
Hi,
she's-
everybody.
Hello, Jana.
Thanks so much for inviting us here tonight to speak to this. Before I start on the business and operations budget narrative, presentation and overview, I would like to take this opportunity. I'm delighted to introduce you to David Riley, our new facilities director. We've wanted to bring him to the board, and I'd like to ask him to come up and join me in the bright lights, because part of what we're going to be discussing is the facilities piece of the operations. Just to give you kind of an overview, David has been in facilities for 20 years, at least 20 plus. The last 5 of which have been for a school district. We feel so lucky to have him as part of our team. In his short time here, he has already begun to make a huge impact on our facilities department, but even more importantly on our school community. So we are delighted to have him here today. His expertise and his knowledge has been instrumental in honing and crafting our proposed facilities model for you tonight. And he is kind of the linchpin in making this, our proposed model, elevating it to the next level. And we're actually kind of excited to present it to you because we think it's going to be a great benefit to the community. So you mind staying up here with me? No, okay. So the first thing I wanted to say is, and I have a tough act to follow behind Erica and Dave and Sean. They all spoke so eloquently to the impacts of this pandemic on students and families in the community. No less impactful has been the impact on the operational side of the house. And so as I start talking about these models and the shifts that we're making, I know I've said it to this board before, but it bears repeating. This is not a reflection on the people that are in our departments at all. If you ask Dave what he would get if the world was his oyster, right?
Oh, you have a different question. No,
Okay. My answer would be to be able to clone my custodial and my food service staff. That's what I would want. So these people have, just as everybody has, been impacted by this pandemic, but they come into work every day with the best attitudes. They don't complain, they just get it done. And so when we talk about this shift to a model, I just want everybody to remember this is not in no way reflects on those people or their value to our community. This is not a way of pushing people out. In fact, if I could clone all of them and duplicate them, I'd do it. So I wanted to start off with that.
Again, the unsung heroes that we don't
Absolutely.
see here. We don't see what they
Absolutely.
do during the day.
They have had to shift and pivot and come up with different delivery modes of everything from, in supply shortages, food doesn't come in on a truck and we have to scramble and make a meal. I mean, they really have just been incredible. So,
Thank you for saying that, Jeff.
yeah. So to start off with, since Dave, I'm making him stand here with me, we'll start with facilities if that's okay. I wanted to take a moment to quickly kind of remind the board. I've been up here before talking about facilities. Last spring, we had put together a committee to evaluate facilities and options. We looked at about 5 different models. The most dollar cost value model was our fully in-sourced model, and the least expensive model was a hybrid model where we had our own internal maintenance and we outsourced custodial. That was all based on estimates and high level. However, as I just spoke to, there is a value to having our own staff, and that committee recommended to this board that we work towards a fully in-house model. With the understanding, all committee members understood that if the conditions in the labor markets continued the way they had been, we would have to have a different plan. Unfortunately, that has been our reality. For 2 years now, we've had to work a hybrid model. We've tweaked it a couple different ways. We've tried a model that was based on bringing in a certain number of FTE. We've tried using a temp agency. And again, our staff, our regular facility staff have just been rock stars. They just have rolled with the punches, filled the gaps, stuck their fingers in the hole in the wall, just to keep everything going. But to Dave Dalton's point, we feel like it's March. It's the same for them. So part of this model, it's to maintain our facilities and do what we need to do, but part of it is to support our staff, because you just can't keep asking them to dig deep like that, for years. So that's part of the impetus for this model. As we look at it, it's going to be we're in our budget right now, we are working a hybrid model. The one that we're proposing for next year is again going to be a hybrid model, but what we are going to do is we're keeping all of our existing staff. We're implementing a pretty high quality training program to train them up on all sorts of maintenance skills and tasks. We've already sent 2 individuals to a 3-day training on our building automation systems, so that we're going to have, and by April we'll have 3 members that are all trained on operating that system. We've trained everybody on AHERA management, which is the asbestos. They've all gone out and been trained on that. And they were also trained on crowd management, which is a fire code requirement for larger groups of people. So when we do open our facilities back up to the public, hopefully soon, all of them will be able to be on staff and manage crowd control and comply with all the fire codes as well. I'm going to pass it over to David to talk a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of it, but I will tell you that he has brought with him a whole bunch of skills with training, and I hope you'll talk a little bit about some of the things that you've recently been working with the staff on, as far as training and what we're hoping to get. All right, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. One, I'd like to say thank you for this opportunity. Really, really excited about this opportunity. The other thing I'd like to say is one phrase I've yet to hear in this district is, "That's not my job." I ask someone to help me with something. I ask someone, how does this work? How does this? People are stepping up and taking care of things. I'm so impressed. I've worked at districts where that should have been printed above the door. Not my job. Here, people are just willing to roll up their sleeves and help you with anything they ask. It is wonderful. Our new model, the goal is to have a in-house staff person in our facilities anytime they're in use. So that includes weekends, that's nights. Anytime someone's in our buildings, I want to have an in-house staff member there, not on overtime, on standard time, helping. One of my big pushes is customer service. By bringing these things in-house, by training our guys, and we've trained them to take apart commodes and fix flush meters. That's a tough one. We've gone through boiler rooms, and I've explained every system in a boiler room and what they should be looking at on daily checks. I'm trying to bring not just preventive maintenance, but standard maintenance, things that we're right now outsourcing in-house. My guys are loving it. They're being empowered and enabled to do new and exciting things. They're very excited about this. It's really been wonderful. So preventive maintenance will all come in-house. So we're going to see a significant savings, maybe not this year, but as I train them up in the future, and we're going to see a vast increase in customer service. We no longer have to wait for a vendor to come in and take care of this. My guys or I can take care of it on the spot. The safety and health of our staff and learners is, my number one concern, and this is going to allow us to exceed their expectations, not just in safety and health, but they have the right to have a comfortable, welcoming, warm environment in which to work and learn, and we're going to exceed their expectations there too. We've already received a lot of comments about customer service being much better, things being increased. That's my big thing is customer service. I worked at Pepsi's World Headquarters. Pepsi's job is to put soda in cans, and if they can't put soda in cans, that's an emergency. Our job is to put education in young minds, and if we can't put education in young minds, that's just as big an emergency, and that's the way we're dealing with it. So, nothing waits. We try to get on it right away. We're doing much better at closing the loop, keeping people informed of what we're doing and what's going on so they feel part of the solution. So again, it's been a wonderful opportunity. I think this new model offers us great opportunities to make the district a better place and increase customer satisfaction.
Thank you, Dave. That was great. Do any of you have any specific questions about kind of what we're proposing in the model before I let Dave go sit down and continue on? He's probably arguably one of the most enthusiastic facility directors that I have ever worked with or had the pleasure of working with, and I think he's making a big difference here for us. So,
Dave, it's nice to finally meet you, and thank you for coming and joining us tonight, but I will say that I have heard anecdotal information about the positives that people have seen in your short tenure, so welcome and thank you. And I will open the floor to questions, any questions that the board might have.
I didn't know if anybody else had PTSD when the boiler room came up.
The boiler room is a little scary.
I went, what about the boiler room? So that would be great in-house training. We had somebody who was trained on our boiler, the one that was like 80 years old, and it was tinkered. You missed that part.
Thankfully.
I love that they're getting trained on the new equipment.
The systems we have now are modern and
Yeah.
advanced, and there's opportunities there to increase customer satisfaction and save money. And that's why we're sending them out to training on the HVAC front end. So we don't even have to wait for me to respond. My guys in the school can respond right away. And I think that helps.
Do you think the enthusiasm that you're giving and your employees are getting, that might attract, as they go to these different spots and these different trainings, maybe we'd be able to attract other employees?
I think the last thing I want is for my guys to wake up in the morning and go, I've got to go there again.
Yeah.
The great thing about facilities, it's dynamic. It's problem solving, which is a lot of fun, and you never know day to day what you're doing. I mean, it really is an exciting career. I'm handy, I like helping people. This is perfect for me. And my guys are very much the same way. So I think once word gets out that we're this rising tide is lifting all boats, I think we may have better luck attracting people.
Thank you.
I think the other part, though, you have to remember is that custodial work is not that. Right? Custodial work is not what Dave's describing, and our fellows aren't going to be engaging in sweeping and emptying trash and all of that. That's not the same high-level satisfying work necessarily, though, you know, once times change and people may want to come back into public sector work when the demands are not as great in the labor market, you know, perhaps we can, you know, reevaluate it, but.
Well, and a custodian has custody of the building. A custodian isn't a cleaning person. A custodian is someone who has custody of the building, somebody who's concerned about all the systems, all the people in the building, right? It encompasses a lot more than simply cleaning. Now, when there are emergencies, these guys will clean, right? They will certainly, but they're also doing much higher level stuff, and they're very excited.
And the pay that, part of the analysis that was done when I asked the task force to convene included, you know, different rates of pay. Of course, we raised all of the salaries for everybody, and we still didn't get any luck hiring anybody, but, you know, for people with the level of skill that Dave's describing, I think not only brings job satisfaction, but the uptick in the compensation for somebody with that level of training would be better, and I think retention will be, I'm guessing, is going to be better. People don't usually leave jobs because they don't, necessarily because of money. Oftentimes you leave it because the working conditions are not, you know, satisfying in some way. And right now, when we have literally asked every person, whether it's operations or staff, to continuously give more and more in so many different ways, eventually people get burnt out in the, you know, and if they can never satisfy or feel like that they're doing a good job or meeting the vast needs, then I think that also contributes to our ability to retain and satisfaction for staff. Thank you so much, Dave, for all you're doing to improve upon that for us.
So thank you very much for allowing me.
Yeah.
The other exciting piece about this model that I think, and I'm really looking forward to see how it plays out, is that this model actually could have some long-term cost savings benefits for this district as we wind up training our staff. It's going to take a while. We have a learning curve, right? But once we get people trained so that we can actually perform some of these preventative maintenance tasks that we are outsourcing right now at top dollar, I think over time we're going to see that preventative maintenance costs drop to an extent that we're going to notice it. We're going to feel it. So I think there are a lot of good points to the model. It's different than what we've done before. But in this case, as you've heard time and time again tonight, we've got to think different because we can't work the way that we have in the past. We've got to be creative with our resources. And so this is our best attempt, you know, to do that.
Is there a way, we're gonna outsource, is there a way to maintain quality that's not our people?
It's funny you should mention that. So I am a self-proclaimed spreadsheet geek. Proud of it, card-carrying member. And since we started with this custodial services group, we created our own database. So when a concern or complaint comes into our building leads, they send it to my administrative assistant in the business office. We're tracking it on a spreadsheet with pivot tables so that we can actually say we've had 10 complaints about paper products. We've had 12 complaints about soap dispensers. By week, by date, we have a once-a-week meeting with this vendor where the whole facilities team comes together, the building leads, David, myself, my assistant. We do a Zoom call. We review the data. We look at the charts. We talk about where the issues are. We tell them if we think they need to come to the building. They 3 days this week, they came and did an inspection in the morning. So we are actively managing this contract. And that is the only way that this kind of outsourcing model will work, is you have to manage the contract. So we're doing our best. We're learning. We're learning as we go, different things that work, but we have found that the data, as with most things, is the impactful piece, and it allows us to be able to say, no, you're not doing that job right, or we need to look here. Here's what we need.
And not just passively waiting for complaints. We're inspecting everyone. And if we've had a complaint in an area, that's on the inspection for the next few days to make sure that they are following. Yes, lately, yes.
Wait,
We've seen a marked
What-
improvement.
they like us, have faced some challenges and been spread pretty thin. I think that our approach has been one that we've built enough data that we've been able to get a little bit more skin in the game. So we have been seeing an increase in responsiveness over the last, specifically the last 2 weeks. I think we've seen a large improvement in this model. And again, keep in mind, we had some outsourced custodial services, but only at the junior, senior high. The elementary school is a whole new beast that the group is learning. And it's very different doing custodial work at an elementary school versus a high school. So there has been a little bit of a learning curve for them as well. But we do think that it's improving, and we're actively working it.
And the improvements also, we're doing 10 o'clock at night. I've come in and done inspections 6:30 in the morning. We've done inspections with managers, with the owner of the company, to really, press our needs and our requirements. We certainly are seeing improvements.
Am I right to assume that people that bring in the background check?
Absolutely. Yep. In fact, right now, I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity, but it's taking 2 to 3 weeks to get the state police background check done on people. It never used to be that long, but they've been bringing in groups of people, like 2 or 3 at a time, to get the background check process, but sometimes it takes a month to get the approval for them to be able to bring in that person as a substitute. So, yeah, we are mindful of that and very careful about that.
I'm sorry. And then, is it the same people that come in clean all the time, or will that vary day to day, or,
We have pretty much the standard
Yeah, for the
roster,
majority of the
barring
time,
somebody
it's-
being sick.
Okay.
Or if somebody's out, they do have a substitute, or sometimes we have a staff member that's out, and we'll call them and say, we need an extra, right now we have 2 day porters helping us at lunch period, because we have to sanitize the tables between seatings. We just didn't have enough staff. So we have 2 outsourced day porters, and if we have one of our staff that's out on a vacation day or out sick, we have to call them and ask for another person. So we're really trying to maximize the resources that we have. We're also trying to allow our staff to take a vacation day without feeling like the whole world is sitting on their shoulders. So I think, again, that's another benefit to this. We'll have resource to help support our staff.
It's fair to say about a teacher working days on a regular basis, they do the same custodian working in my room, fairly regular.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
How many hours per week would you say you spend managing this custodial group?
Well, since Dave's gotten here, it's been cut in half.
Jointly.
I do a every morning check-in with both buildings. First thing I do is checking with them, see how their inspections went for the night before. And then we generally have an hour-long meeting once a week where we go through all our points of interest. So certainly less than I'm spending managing my employees, but, more than hopefully once we get this settled, will be needed.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions on the facilities model?
We have two questions.
Okay, yeah, I have a couple questions for Dave when he gets to his section, but are there any questions about the facilities model? I mean, just to close the loop on that. But
let you-
this is somewhat related, Dave, if you just want to speak to this, because it's kind of related. Can you share what our actual number of custodians are this year and what they would be next year?
Custodians right now.
Or
I-
facilities people?
Okay.
Yeah.
Right now I have about 3.1. We had budgeted for 11.
Okay, so we have 11 in the budget, and
And at that 11 in the budget, that was 4 short of what we knew our need would be, based on our expanded facilities.
okay.
Next fiscal year, right, next year, my plan is to have 6.5, 6.6.
And does that include you?
Yes.
Okay. So it was 11 was budgeted this year, but that was 4 short of
Based on
what
our
we
increased-
needed for the new building.
Yes.
And next year, it's going to be
6.6?
6.6, plus the
The
contract for
outsourced,
the
yeah.
cleaning.
Yes.
Thank you. I think that answers that question. The other one's related to utilities, so do we want to just finish up with Dave?
Sounds
Since
great.
he's there? Okay. So, how much of the increase in the utility costs, which are significant for next year, are related to running the HVAC system continuously?
Well, one, we're not running it continuously. We have certainly expanded the times it's running, but unfortunately, it's a question I can't answer. We expanded the schools, then sent all the kiddos home, and then the kiddos came back and we ran it at this expanded schedule because of COVID. So I don't have a base year. I have no one solid year of this is what it would normally cost and this is the increase based on COVID.
Okay.
You know, I wish I did, but
Makes sense.
Can you talk a little bit about what's going on with utilities in general that's causing the increase? Because it was pretty significant, the utility increases.
yeah, propane costs are expected to go very high this year. And then electrical costs, both delivery and generation, are expected to spike. We're seeing it across the board in utility costs. You know, you always hope that, especially with propane and that sort of thing, that as the prices increase, it becomes cost effective to pull it from more resources, and hopefully that brings the price down. But all expectations we're hearing right now are a, you know, low 20% increase in propane and a low 30% increase in electrical costs this year.
Wow. Okay. Any other questions for Dave around utilities or the facilities in any? Okay, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much, Dave. Appreciate it. So the other area that's being impacted most significantly on the operational side, well, I should say, the operations side includes technology, and Jason will be speaking to that a little later, but it also includes business, finance, food service, facilities, and transportation. So two areas are, as Erica alluded to it, transportation is a challenge. We had, if you recall, we brought an RFP to this board. We had asked to increase our buses to a quantity of 6. We have never been able to get 6 buses for this year because we don't have a driver. So that, again, talk about the flexibility of our building staff. We've had to readjust routes to accommodate 5 buses, which means that we've had to shift start times and different things at the building to accommodate that. In this budget in front of you, we are proposing the cost of the 6 buses, which is what we'd asked, but it's likely that when you view our actuals for this year versus our budget, you're going to see a discrepancy. It's because of that missing bus. The third area is the food service delivery. And again, same thing that I said before about our staff holds true here. This staff, our intention was to fully staff both schools. We have not been able to do that for 2 school years now. We've had to bring in, last year we had to bring in on an emergency basis a food service management company in October because we just didn't have enough staff to cover all the needs, and we had the heightened need of delivering food to classrooms last year, which created a whole other level of service that we've never had to do in this program. This year, Linda Hopi, our food service director, and I worked probably from February to about April to come up with the optimal staffing for an in-house program. We put it together. We looked at salary comps. We looked at adjustments. We hired, and come August, we still couldn't find people to fill the model. So we were back to outsourcing again. And again, at this point, we are looking at continuing the outsourcing into next year at one of our buildings. We're going to keep our staff at the elementary school, and they will run the operations on that side of the house. We've reconfigured some of the positions to optimize our ability to meet student needs and serve students. But basically, overall, it's the same hybrid kind of model that we're running with our facilities. So other than that, the business office, we are finally fully staffed. Our budget's fairly level in that area. And then Jason will take over the technology piece when he comes up afterwards. So that's kind of my high-level operational.
Okay, so I'm going to shoot you some questions.
Okay.
So you answered the question on in-house custodial versus the outsourcing. Can you do the same for the food service?
Yes. So our food service department, at our level staffing this year, we have, it's sort of the same situation as with our guidance. We'll have the same number of FTE next year, but we'll be shifting them around. So instead of having a food service director and a manager, and then just a couple of techs underneath, we'll have more techs and one supervisory, because that person isn't needed to supervise both buildings now. Some of the operational side of the food service management will shift to my office, as far as like doing some of the oversight that's required per USDA for the food service management. So some of that management responsibility will come, shift to a different place. The model that we're looking at right now, if we were to level run it next year, it comes to over $400,000. If we go to this proposed model, it's still over $400,000, but it's a savings of about, we estimate, $30,000 by running it with this reconfigured model.
Okay. Thank you. Is the drop in adequacy aid from the state due to the decrease in our student body?
The adequacy aid formula actually has many inputs. It's something that the state legislature votes on. Free and reduced students, we've talked about that, goes into that formula. Special ed students, ESOL students, and then there's a metric on grade 3 proficiency in reading that goes in. The number of students is also an input. So yes, it is a factor. It's just not the only factor in that equation.
Thank you. How is the cost increase for the administrators determined? What they're looking at is on the lines, the amount of money that was budgeted this year compared to next year. So in some cases, it's going up by 2%, and in other cases, in other areas, it looks like it's going up by 10%. So there's like this range.
Yeah.
Can you help
So-
explain that?
Sure. So I want everybody to understand that variance does not mean that there's a administrator that's getting a 10% increase. There isn't anybody that got those kinds of increases. But what we do have is some shifting of resource and some hiring of new people that weren't on staff when we put the budget together last year. So we refer to that sometimes as breakage, meaning you have a new person that comes in, you get a different salary rate than the person that was outgoing. So you'll see those variances in that area, but I can assure you that the increases for the staff are budgeted based on their fiscal year 22 salary rates, with an estimated, I think we budgeted 3%, just across the board for that. So.
Is that what this is going to ballpark be decided for administrators next year for increase?
It will be based on performance.
Yeah.
It's
As
always
it was
based on
last year.
performance. So there isn't going to be, everybody gets the same amount.
Right.
We just put an average amount in.
Right.
For budgetary purposes.
And that's how we did
budgetary
it
purposes.
last year as well. We budgeted on the lines because that's the way we have to report it to the state, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's where the money goes.
Okay, next question. Oh, we addressed that one, the food service. And again, we'll give you a little chart to show, how that looks for food service, for facilities, and for school counseling services as well.
Yeah, I need a little more, a deeper dive into the food service model. I just need a little more information on that. I don't know if that's this week or next week, or who, what, how, all of those things. If I'm hearing correctly, I'm hearing that the elementary school would pretty much stay staffed as it is, that we are looking to outsource junior high, high school. I think the community members want to be sure that the children are getting adequate meals. The meals are being provided that are hot when they're supposed to be hot and cold when they're supposed to be cold. Who's preparing those meals, where they're coming from. Just a deeper dive at some point. And like I said, I don't know if that's tonight or if that's next week's, but I think the community really needs a little more information on that.
Yeah, maybe definitely we can do that. I can meet with Linda Hopi and with Stephanie Doan, who's our outsourced food service manager at the high school.
Okay.
If you could maybe send the specific questions you have. I mean, we're gonna do an org chart kind of to give you a high-level view of operational, but if there are specific questions you have about meal preparation, I'm probably not the best source for that, but I could talk to the others and gather that information for you.
You know, I think we as a community want to be sure that we are providing the students with proper meals and what that looks like. And it doesn't have to be a matter of, you know, what is the menu each week. We just want to be sure that if we are leaving this to someone else to be taking over the, you know, nutritional component, that it's a company and they understand what this community is expecting.
I think I understand what you're asking. So what I can assure you is that we are operating under the USDA school lunch program. There are requirements, regardless of who serves that food, of what components go into every single meal that is served to a student. And so even if we go with an outsourced model, we have a contract that we sign with them, an agreement, that ensures that they have to comply with all components of the USDA school lunch program. They have to, and I don't know all the details, but I know there's certain numbers of times that you have to have a green vegetable versus an orange, and milk or juice, and fruit, calorie content, sodium content.
Yes.
All of those things remain exactly in place in order for us to even participate in this program. So regardless of who's serving that meal, the components of the program have to be adhered to, and it's in a contract.
Do they use our facility to prepare the meal?
Yep, they prepare it right on site. They use our equipment. They can use our commodities ration. We get some USDA commodities. They can pick and choose which commodities they do. There's a program called, I think it's USDA Fresh, where they can actually get fresh fruits and vegetables. You can use your allocation instead of getting canned goods. You can use it for fresh goods. They have access to use those commodities just as our food service director would on our program. And the part that I was talking about where there's a little bit more administrative pieces passed to the business office, we do a monthly reconciliation in my office. We ask for all invoices from the food service management company, and we go back through, we total it up, and we reconcile it against what they're giving us in our statement. And at the end of the year, there's one reconciliation entry where they've given us a contract price that we pay against, and if they come in over or under that amount, we reconcile that out based on the actual costs of the program, and all rebates have to come back to the district. The contract is very strict. In fact, the state Department of Education requires that they sign those agreements as well as the district.
Excellent, thank you.
Did that answer your question?
It did answer quite a bit.
Okay, great.
And it's currently the model now, too. So the model for next year isn't different than what's happening now. And I was over there covering lunch duty for the sixth graders and asking them, you know, how are you liking the school year? You know, what's your favorite thing? And there was 3 different meals that were there with kids eating, because it was still sixth grade, you know, the food is brought to them. They don't go into the cafeteria. And they had chicken broccoli fettuccine was one, cheeseburgers was another one, and Caesar salad with chicken on it. And that isn't what we thought. Holy cannoli.
That's
The
not what I
lunch
had for
program
lunch at
has
work
come
today.
a long way, baby.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So the options are quite impressive, and things that kids would eat if they went out to a restaurant. And it wasn't that it looked like it was mystery meat in it. It was chicken in it. You know? So I was like very, very impressed with it. And the kids said they loved the lunch program, and they loved changing classes, and they loved their classes, and they were just giddy.
One of the experiences I've had outsourcing, which is always a very controversial topic, but outsourcing in facilities, you know, you have to look at the benefit and the cost reduction in workman's comp, having to cover vacation time, things like that. So outsourcing sometimes is really beneficial to an organization because that company is now responsible for those other additional costs, as well as covering people's sick time and vacation and things like that. So it gives organizations the ability to control their cost, as well as kind of focus on their own internal employees while still maintaining a level of service.
Right,
which
that's a great point, and I
is
didn't
important.
mention that, but as,
Yeah.
when we have our own employees, of course, we give them vacation time and they have sick time and all of those things, so when you add all of that in, I think it's 239 out of 260 days on average that an employee would work. 260 is the full year, but when we subcontract out, the company is responsible to meeting a standard of clean and not hours or people or days. So we still get that service for the whole year as opposed to that. So part of what you're talking about when I was talking about the potential cost savings to the district long term, that is a component of that model.
And Jana, what you were talking about just then, I think Susan brought it up in our last meeting, was a performance contract as opposed to a number
Right.
of employees contract.
Right. When we initially started with the outsourcing, all we knew was our model with FTE.
Right.
So what we asked for, well, we're down 6 people, so we need 6 FTE. And that's probably a more expensive way to go. This new model is based on a performance. So we establish what the standards are for clean and cleanliness and what functions they are doing. If they want to do it with 10 half-time people, 10 full-time people, whatever they want to do, that's their bailiwick. But all we care about is that they're adhering to the contract and they're meeting that standard. So, yeah, I think it does. I think to Heather's point, it does give us it's a cost-effective way for us to kind of meet that standard. And as Susan alluded to, it doesn't mean it's forever. But none of us has a crystal ball to know when this labor situation is going to turn around. And in the meantime, we're sucking the life out of our staff, and we have to do something to support them.
Now, if you can find a good outsourced contract, you keep that relationship solid, so they take care of you.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay,
So that's kind of all I had. Do we have any more questions?
No, that was all the questions that were written. I think people have asked questions, but are there any other questions for Jana on any
I
of
just have
her?
a statement as I'm sitting here for my 9th budget. I'm realizing that probably in 3 years, we haven't had time to talk about food service, janitorial staff. We used to have a bus committee. I don't even think we have that anymore. There's a lot of things that, due to COVID, we haven't discussed, and these questions are just reminding me that, we haven't been able to cover everything because of change in administration, changes with COVID. And it's something to think ahead in the next few years of how, again, onboarding, so people understand these things. Gary never had any of this. He's been thrown into budget because we haven't had the people here to discuss it. That's just my statement.
And I have to say, I haven't felt so excited about facilities in my
Oh, I know. I know. Isn't he amazing?
I'm like, I can fix something.
I know.
My language.
Just when I heard the boiler system, I'm like, oh my God, Raj. Please, nothing wrong with the boiler system.
Thank you very much, Jana.
All right,
And
you're welcome,
Jason,
Jana.
we will
Really
call up
appreciate it.
Jason, who is
Jason,
batting
the
cleanup tonight.
The sole survivor.
Well, he's batting cleanup tonight. We still have Deb at our next
Save
meeting.
the best for last.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Listen, did you bring ice cream? That's,
There's pizza upstairs. All right,
You're free to roam. Jana, you guys can head out.
thank you both.
feel like somebody should stay and watch Jason.
What am I, chopped liver?
I'm rooting you on.
I'll be quick. So Jason Carey, Director of Information Technology, FY22 budget, overall 3% increase over last year, so not too bad. A big increase that you'll see in this budget compared to last year is in our software lines overall. And that was due to a couple bigger ticket items like our financial system, one of our backup disaster recovery solutions. We added onto some Adobe licensing, so those numbers add up quick. So that's mostly what that is. And the other half of that would be actual software that we're purchasing for student use in the classroom. And as far as the budget goes, it's not a very exciting one. In the past few years, we've done all of our wireless, we've done all of our networking, audio-visual solutions in the classroom. So next year is really going to be about replacing student devices, continuing to support our one-to-one program with Chromebooks, replacing an iPad cart, replacing fourth grade Chromebooks, which they now have at the elementary school. Every student has a device in a cart in the classroom, which has been great this year. And so mostly replacement, a lot of gear. As Sean already spoke to, one of the new pieces that we're buying next year, or that we hope to buy in the budget, would be the Cafeteria Projector solution there. And there was also another projector for the art room, which is just a room. Somehow during construction, that room didn't get a short throw projector like the new 5th grade wing did. So looking to get something in there. There's a projector now in there, but it's tabletop, and this would be short throw, wall mounted. Much better solution with audio in there. So that's really it. Again, nothing too exciting, mostly replacement, a few new items, and
Okay, well, let me shoot you some questions. Jake.
questions, please.
Okay, is the district considering a subscription to a new digital learning platform and severing its use of Google Classroom?
No is the short answer. An LMS, learning management system, is something we'd like to move to down the road, and we've discussed it so far, but unofficially. So, no immediate plans to move to an LMS and away from Google Classroom in the short term.
Okay. Can Newmarket Public Schools purchase software with neighboring schools to defray costs?
So, whenever possible, we're participating in group purchases. And NISTE is one program. It's New Hampshire Society of Technology Education for Education. And we purchase it through a few pieces of software through them and get a somewhat of a discount. We haven't tried or looked into anything with neighboring districts, but whenever possible, we do participate in those group purchases. And we do receive some heavy discounts through Microsoft and some other vendors when purchasing software with educational discounts. So.
What evidence that software is being used does the district look for before choosing to renew a subscription?
So currently, it's a somewhat of an old-fashioned method where we'll just communicate with whoever's requesting the software and ask them if they're using it. Are the kids still using this? Do you have teachers still using it? So we poll the staff and see if they're using something. A lot of the requests come from our computer teachers, who will manage their own budgets, manage their own requests, and they're very good about, I want to get rid of this, we didn't use it that much last year, or it's not the right tool, I want to spend the money on this. So, but we're in the process of rolling out a new single sign-on solution in the district, which will have advanced analytics, and we'll be able to see when kids are logging in, when staff are logging into almost any application that's web-based. So we'll be able to take a look at a report, dashboard, and see which apps are being used, which apps are not. If something didn't get used last year, well, there's no sense in renewing it last year. Or the other side of that is maybe staff need professional development on that software or need some additional support training to take advantage of it. So that's on the horizon. We've been rolling that out, implementing that this year, but it's been a lot of work though. So we're working towards that. And the last piece of this would be the student data privacy law, HB 1612, that we had to comply with probably 2 years ago, in which one of our responses was creating an application approval process. So anytime a teacher wants a new application, it's got to come through the IT office. We have to get a data privacy agreement signed between the district and the vendor. And if they're not willing to sign it, we don't allow it in the district, and we surely wouldn't purchase it. And if it gets past the IT office, it doesn't get past Jana, so nothing does. So I'll get requests, or the business office will reach out. Hey, we got a request for this software. Send it back to me. We decide whether or not it's approved. So again, right now we're doing it the old-fashioned way, but by the end of this year we'll have some real analytics, real insight into what we're using.
Do you do any multi-factor authentication when logging into sensitive systems?
Do we? So-
Will we with SSO?
Yeah, so for students, I mean, I guess what's sensitive information, right? All of
Not
our
for students,
systems.
obviously, yeah, but for grade books and.
Yeah, so we don't do that for,
IEPs and things like
IEPs,
that, yeah.
but any of our, especially in IT, any of our systems, we're using multi-factor authentication with the Authenticator app. Anywhere where you have the keys to the city, we have it locked down. But that's something we definitely want to move forward with or move towards, especially for any administrator that has keys to everything.
Okay, what is the purpose of the computer lab and lap cart in the high school when students are one-to-one?
So our current one-to-one program is made up of Chromebooks, which run the Chrome OS, which only run web-based applications. And then we also have iPads at the pre-K to first grade level. So these laptop carts are for the junior, senior high school, where the kids only have Chromebooks through one-to-one. So our PC lab that we implemented or rolled out this year is for such things as computer-aided design, video production, music production, any advanced application that can't run on a Chromebook. And the machines we purchased this year, if you remember, we went out to bid for those, but they were probably $2,000 a laptop. High specs, very robust, and capable of supporting STEAM programs and some new curriculum that we introduced this year. So same thing, the laptop cart that's in the FY22 request is for Unified Arts, and it's replacing an existing cart, which is, it's a little long in the tooth. And we have some new staff members this year that are dying to take full advantage of these and introduce, like I mentioned, music production software. So looking to get them the right tools and get them in the hands of the students.
And those requests for a lot of this type of instructional technology come from the staff. And then Jason will design, you know, the hardware pieces that will support the software.
Yeah, we've got some
And
great
programming
new
that we
staff,
need.
especially in those areas where we can, it's, hey, sit down, tell us exactly what you need. We go and figure out what that equipment is and match the equipment to the specific needs. And one more thing worth mentioning is a Chromebook is probably, I don't know, it's eighth of the cost of some of these laptops. So we don't, I know some other districts provide Windows laptops to every student, but you know, we can supplement with a few carts here and there and a few computer labs.
Any other questions for Jason?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Jason.
Well, that is a wrap for tonight.
Any other questions before we wrap up?
You had mentioned presentation format. Did you want to quickly talk about that when Jana was here, or?
Oh, sorry, yes.
Thank
Well, you guys can discuss it and I'll talk to her about whatever it
Well-
is you want to do.
Well, I guess it really impacts her, so I don't want to, she's the expert on how much time it takes for her to do it.
But-
I know the budget committee generally has historically asked for breakdown by function code. I don't know what they would ask for this year, but I feel like we should be aware of it.
Well, it had always been presented as function code previously, and people didn't understand what it was that we were asking for in that format. And so that's why this new format was created as a transition. So if what people really want is the function code format, if you look at the last financial statement you got from Jana, it includes that, but it doesn't break it out by people or benefits or anything. It'll just say, for example, instructional services, and it'll be an amount. It includes everything lumped kind of together. You'll have one line. So it's a different format, and I can bring that next week. No, if you can go ahead.
Well,
We can
okay.
bring
I just
you
didn't-
a copy, we can bring you a copy of what that looked like, and you guys can decide what you want. But providing multiple formats is not something that's sustainable.
And just for Heather and Andrew's edification, what happened in the past when it would be like a cost center thing, for lack of a better word? You know, staffing at the district level is 1,000. And so it would be a number, whatever that number is. And then it would be 1,001 for Newmarket Elementary School, 1,002 for the junior high, 1,003 for the high school. And so you could look at it broken down by school, by different topic, different things like that. Gary, that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah,
I know.
I'll bring a copy next week, and if you guys really want it in that format, moving forward, we'll just do it in that format instead of in this format. But we'll bring that forward if that's what budget prefers. And
My concern is that the budget committee is gonna ask for a breakdown by function code.
Can we ask them?
I mean,
Well, and I don't know how much time it takes to
But
do that. I don't want
I mean,
to
for
waste your
us,
time.
the budget committee, I mean, is a separate entity. So the format that we present the budget in is a school,
Centric.
it's what you all want and the way that you would like to present it. I mean, we're happy to provide people with the information in whatever format, but providing it in multiple formats was never the intention. We just had gotten complaints about how people didn't understand
Right.
what that was because they're just topics. And we'll bring it and show you, and you guys
Okay,
can
yeah, I'd
decide.
love
It's
to
no big
see it.
deal. I mean, it's just not, it's not a both.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's not sustainable to have two ways that we're doing it. So it's an and/or, and we'll bring it, and you guys can just have a conversation about that.
Okay, cool.
It's not a problem. I mean,
Well,
and
is
it's
it-
not to
How long does it
say,
take to generate that report? I mean, if it's days, hours, then yeah, but if it's,
it's
No,
sustaining
No,
that.
But to Susan's point, for example, the actual line item detail in our budget, we have thousands of general ledger lines. So in order to present to you in the gel format that you have that's meaningful, we download that into a system and then we have to manually manipulate it. So manually, I think to Susan's point, manually manipulating it into two different formats, well, it's not impossible, and it certainly can be done. It's just another step, and then, if you've manually manipulated over here and something changes and you forget to move it over here, now you've got two manual versions that you're managing, so.
so you have manually have to fix the function code format as well, so.
Right, basically
Yeah,
what you
so-
do is we take our general ledger account, which has like 5 or 6 different segments, and we use my Excel spreadsheet, and we basically break it in text to columns, so I can sort it by each particular element of my function code, which means something. So one of those is a function. One is an object, which is how you're seeing it, based on like salaries, benefits, that kind of thing. So it's the same information. The bottom line numbers are the same. It's just another presentation, another way of looking at the same data.
An easier way to look at it. This is an easier way to look at it.
Most people understand this better, I think, just because we all understand what textbooks are, we understand what salaries are, we understand what benefits are. When I start talking to you about other educational, I can't remember, some of them are so arcane, like co-curricular, we know what that means, but there are some that just say other instructional. So what is that? Like, what do those people do, and what is that? What is that? So it's just a little easier when you see it in this format, but, we work at the pleasure of the board. So what you are looking for information is what our job is to provide, so.
So we can show you what that other format looks like. If that's what you would prefer, then we'll go back to that other way
I
of
guess
doing
the
it.
question is what we collectively would prefer. Because if there's work that needs to be done that the full board does not think needs to happen, then I would think we would say that now. So I guess I would, if the decision is going to ultimately be that we keep this way, and Jana has just told us that it takes different steps to do the other thing, I feel like it might take time, but I'll do whatever the board wants to do collectively.
But I mean, so is it okay for us to say to the budget committee, like, we just don't provide it in that format?
Right, this is the format that we provided in.
And isn't that the one you gave last year?
We gave this one, and then and then we tried to prevent, so that people could start to see. And there was really, yeah.
There was a request for it, if I recall.
Huh?
If I recall last year, there was a request from the budget committee for it in the other format. And that's what
You're right.
I just don't want to.
And also, one thing I do want to share, and I haven't mentioned it yet to the board, but there was a legislative change, and I believe it was in September of this year, very recent, but it passed, there's a certain statute that governs how we present our information as we go through the budget season. And there was an amendment to that particular statute that says that at public hearings, when, because we're just at a budget workshop now, but at a public hearing, at the deliberative session, we have to have line item detail in what they call the sub-account format, which is what I just talked about, all the different breakdowns available to people. It doesn't mean we have to put it on the website, but it has to be available, or you have to have someone who can answer the questions, a qualified person who can answer the questions, which on most days I hope I can be that. But we will be bringing a binder, I explained to Susan, with that information to the meetings, just because it's a new law that we have to.
So that may mean that we should go with the format that you're gonna require to do anyways then.
Well, no, it's not what you were, well, not the function code, it's literally every line in the budget.
Yeah. That's a good
About,
point, 'cause we don't wanna print
about
out.
161.
Oh, yeah, that'd be too many. For everybody. to
And
do.
that's twice, times two, right? Because we do it for the default, and then we have to do it for the regular.
So you just have to have it at the meeting.
I have to have it at the meeting.
Okay, and that's,
Or-
you don't have to change massage, it's
Or
not
I'll-
as much work.
And also having somebody there that can speak to it also meets the requirement of the statute. So I hope that, people, I may be able to help people find the answers they're really asking without them having to wade through, 300 pages of paper.
So maybe we just need to, once you review the other format, if we all agree, to say to the budget committee that that's not something we,
Yeah, I don't wanna put any more, but I'd love
Yeah.
to just take a peek at it next time. But just so you know, yeah.
I mean, they both have merit. Just-
Right, yeah, I'd love to take a peek, but I don't want you to do any more than you are already.
So we'll just address it next time.
Okay, yeah.
Kind of the next step here, feels like that this was presented to the board and vote on it.
Yep, that would be the next step.
Can
I mean,
We'll provide you with more
right.
the information that's lacking, and then if you want anything else, like, generally speaking, there isn't, then if you feel satisfied and it's
Yeah.
good, then you just vote, but if you're not, then we have another meeting, I guess.
We have another meeting.
Yeah,
And it's okay to vote on it even just after, like, when we receive the final presentation next week.
yep.
Doesn't matter that, okay.
Nope, we could do it all on the same night.
So Deb will do, her
I'll have Deb
presentation.
here, and then we'll try to give you some of the
On the
other
18th.
charts.
Okay.
If you do have other questions
That was
that
just
come
the-
up,
yeah.
send them off to me.
Okay,
If
good.
you're thinking, oh, yeah, well,
And-
especially after 3.5 hours. and it's
Yes,
Right.
sort of by the same time
Thankfully,
frame.
that clock's wrong.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
clock's wrong.
it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Happens every year.
It feels like 3 hours.
One of these days,
like
I'm gonna
this.
fix that stupid clock.
I remember it from last night.
Thanks, Gina, sorry, thank you.
But yes, just
Thank
get the
you, Jana.
questions again, because I think that helped us facilitate things tonight.
Yeah, this was great.
Yes, so I seek a motion to adjourn this workshop session. Motion
Second.
from Mr. Swanson with a second from Mrs. Durant. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned at 8:17.